think of clothes as just, well, clothes, something to wear. But what if every single thread told a story? What if a garment was so packed with meaning that it was considered sacred? Well, today we're diving into some of the most significant, most detailed garments ever described, so let's get right into it. So that's the big question we're tackling today. We're going to explore the holy garments made for Aaron the high priest. We'll break down the materials, the amazing craftsmanship, and all the profound symbolism that was literally woven into every single piece, all based on this incredibly detailed account from the ancient texts. So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the raw materials, what I'm calling the divine palette. Then we'll get into the main vestments, the ephod and its girdle, the famous breastplate, that really unique blue robe, and finally all the other adornments that completed this holy attire. Okay, so before a single stitch could even be made, the materials themselves had to be prepared. And believe me, these weren't just any old materials. Each one was chosen for its richness and its meaning, creating what was basically a divine palette for this holy service. The level of artistry here is just, wow. They use these vibrant threads of blue, purple, and scarlet, along with a superfine twined linen. Now, these colors weren't just for decoration. They were deeply symbolic. But the most incredible part? The gold. Get this. They would beat pure gold into paper-thin plates and then painstakingly cut it into fine wires. Wires they could actually weave right into the fabric. Can you even imagine the shimmer and the weight of that? All right, let's move on to the first major piece, the ephod. Now, this was not just an article of clothing. It was a foundational piece, a garment designed to carry this incredibly powerful memorial right on the high priest's shoulders. So, what in the world is an ephod? Well, you can think of it as a highly ornate, sleeveless vest or maybe an apron. It was the central garment, intricately woven, and it was designed to hold other key sacred items, which we're going to get to in just a minute. The ephod itself was a masterpiece of what the text calls cunning work, which basically means it was skillfully and artfully designed. It used that exact same divine palette of gold wire and colored threads, and it was all coupled together at the shoulders. It also came with a curious girdle, which is just a beautifully woven belt made in the exact same intricate style. And sitting right on top of the shoulders were two onyx stones, each one set in gold. And this is where the ephod's real purpose just clicks into place. See, those two onyx stones weren't just for decoration. Nope. Engraved on them, like a signet ring, were the names of all 12 tribes of Israel. So the big takeaway here is this. When the high priest wore the ephod, he was symbolically carrying the entire nation on his shoulders before God. It was a constant living memorial. Now, building on that very symbolism and attached to the ephod was maybe the most famous piece of all, the breastplate of judgment. This piece also represented the 12 tribes, but, in an even more elaborate and absolutely stunning display. The breastplate was this incredible grid of 12 precious stones, all set in 4 perfect rows. The text actually lists them by their ancient names, from the Odem for Reuben to the Yashafef for Benjamin, and each unique stone was engraved with the name of a tribe. It was a complete and ordered representation of the entire nation worn directly over the high priest's heart. And the construction was just so precise. The breastplate was made as a perfect square from a single piece of cloth that was folded over to create a sort of pouch. It was then fastened to the ephod with pure gold chains, gold rings, and a lace of blue thread. And all of this was to make sure it could never come loose from the ephod during service. The two pieces were truly meant to be one. So, underneath the ephod and the breastplate was another really key garment, the robe. This piece was a bit simpler in its body, but it had this truly unique feature along its hem, something you could not only see, but hear. This robe was made entirely of woven blue cloth. The opening for the head was reinforced with a really strong band, like the collar of a habergeon, which is an ancient word for a coat of mail armor, just to make sure it would never tear. But the most distinctive feature, for sure, was the hem. It was decorated with this alternating pattern of pomegranates made of blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and little bells of pure gold. So why the bells? Well, this quote gives us the reason. Their sound was meant to be heard when the high priest went into the holy place. It was an audible sign of his service, a living signal that he was ministering before God. A bell, then a pomegranate, a bell, then a pomegranate, all the way around the hem. All right, let's wrap up with the final garments that completed the whole ensemble. This included clothes for the high priest, Aaron, but also distinct attire for his sons, who served as priests right alongside him. And these pieces, well, they really speak of purity and a final, crowning statement of dedication. So they made coats of fine linen for both Aaron and his sons. But you'll notice a distinction in the headwear. A mitre, which was a special turban just for Aaron as high priest, and then goodly turbans for his sons. They also shared girdles, or belts, made from fine linen and decorated with needlework. That consistent use of fine linen is really key here, since it's a material that's so often associated with purity. And the final piece, exclusively for the high priest, was the holy crown. Now, this wasn't a crown like you'd think of for a king. It was actually a plate of pure gold, tied with a blue lace right onto the front of the mitre so it would rest on his forehead. And on that golden plate was an engraving, the ultimate declaration of the high priest's purpose, and really the purpose of all these garments. It read, "Holiness to Yahweh," a total dedication to God. It's like every other piece of clothing, every gem, every golden thread, all led to this one clear statement worn on his forehead for everyone to see. And here's something that's repeated over and over again, like a refrain, all throughout this description, this exact phrase. From the ephod, to the robe, to the crown, every single detail was made precisely as Yahweh instructed Moses in Sipporah. Nothing was left to chance. Every little element was part of a divine blueprint. Talk about absolute intention. So, where does that leave us? I mean, from gold wire woven right into the cloth to little bells that chimed during service, these garments were just a symphony of meaning. Nothing was random. And that makes you think, right? If every single thread, every color, every stone was picked for a reason, what does that say about how important intention is in our own acts of faith? It's a pretty powerful thought to chew on.